Hey everybody, I'm Yvonne Williams with Back to Earth Creations, and in this video I want to show y'all how to make your own wire-wrapped cabochon necklaces or pendants using flat wire. So let's get started. Hey y'all, so to make this necklace, which I have not added the chains off to the sides of it yet. Sorry for my grunty dog if you can hear him. We're going to need a 40 by 30 millimeter cabochon. You could use a gemstone, you could use something made out of resin, or here I have a hand-painted dragon eye. And then you could use a teardrop. This one is 20 millimeters by 8, or you could use just like some beads done up decoratively. It's a 4 millimeter bead, some Russian serpentine. I think that was 8 by 14 maybe. And then a bead cap. That part's not important. What's important is that you can use whatever you want and whatever you have and however you like the way that it looks. So now we are using flat wire, which we have 30 inches of this flat aluminum wire that is about 5 millimeters wide, and it's about an 18 gauge. There should be links to all the different tools and materials used down in the video description below, so be sure to check that out. And then we also, I get my flat wire just in little spools like this. It started out much bigger, but I only have a little bit left. And then we'll also be using 18 gauge half round wire. This is silver plated copper core from Parawire, and it is really nice. And I like the kind of warm silver contrasted with this cold aluminum silver. Then we also have an assortment of different jump rings here. I have 18 gauge 3/16, 16 gauge 1/4 inch, and 16 gauge 5/16. Again, you could use whatever you have on hand. That kind of works in different ways. It's more about having something that will make a secure connection than having specifically just that size. I wouldn't recommend anything lower than a 20 gauge though, because it might not hold up. So we're going to start by bringing the opposite ends of our wire together so that it makes it into a large loop. Oh, also pliers. These are stepped flat nose pliers from Rio Grande, which are currently, at the time of recording, they've been out of stock for a couple of months at least, but you could use just any old pliers. These are bent nose pliers, whatever pliers you like to open and close your rings with. And then round nose pliers and flush cutters for snipping your wire. So we have our wire brought around in half, and you can actually see here I have a little squiggly design. This is actually a design that I've been doing for a few years, and there's a link down in the video description to my DeviantArt gallery where you can go through and see some of the different designs that I've been doing since I think I started back in 2008. I started that DeviantArt account. But if you have any requests for future tutorials, you can link to there and be like, hey, remake this one, should do a tutorial on that. So I've drawn out a very fancy sketch on old scrap paper of how I would like the design to come out. But again, you can start with a design like this, or you could just wing it. A lot of the times I'll sit down and just start winging it because you never know what you'll come up with. And sometimes the happy accidents that happen are far more interesting than what I had originally planned. So just where the natural curve of the wire is happening, I'm going to set down our cabochon and hold it quite firmly using it as the mandrel. And I'm going to start bending our wire around. Just one end and then the other end. And I'm offsetting it just a little bit from each other, but that way we're going to get our shape. Oh, also, some regular old flat nose pliers are really handy in this next step. So I'm going to be coming in, and if it's a painted dragon eye, the pupil will be your center point, but otherwise you could use a chalk pencil or something, or a bit of masking tape to mark on the stone where the halfway point is. But I'm going to line my pliers up with, zooming in just a hair, I'm lining this far left edge of our pliers. I'm lining that up with where we want the bend to be, right in line with the pupil. So I'm going to put my finger here on the inside, and I'm just wrenching that up a nice, sharp 90-degree bend. Then we're going to go through, put our stone back in, and just making sure that everything's still, oops, getting tangled up on the tripod, making sure that everything's still where we want it to be. Okay. And I err on the side of making it just a little tighter than what we might need for it to be, because we can get a little bit of stretch in the next step. So again, I'm holding it. I want the bend to be right here. So just pressing with my thumb and bringing up. So now we have like this. And we can set it back down on our work surface and kind of fiddle with it a bit. But for the most part, I'm really pleased with how that came out. Like, you want it super tight. There we go. And so now comes in the half round wire. We'll only need a couple of inches of it. I prefer to work off the spool, that way there's no waste, but if it's cumbersome to you, go ahead and snip, give yourself about maybe 6 to 8 inches, just depending. And with our half round wire, you can see here, the flat side has a very bright flash to it, and then the rounded side has a bright side and a shadow on it. So if you can't tell by feel of hand, that's how I tell which side's flat and which side's round. So I'm going to come in as close to the tip as we can to the pliers, and about 3 or 4 millimeters in from the tip of the wire. And I'm just going to do, oops, sliding around on me. Yeah, you can see I just have that round up on my hand. It can be cumbersome, but I like to save pennies where I can. And I've just bent this around to where it makes a little hook. And we're going to take our bezel that we're working on, the flat wire, and just hook onto one side of it. And slide that down as much as we can. And now, pulling quite tight, I'm just going to fold around. You could use a round or even a square wire for this, but I prefer the half round because it gives us a really nice tight setting. And I am just cinching and turning. It's easier to turn the bezel like a key almost than it is to lug the whole spool of wire around and around each time. And I'm going to do, oh, how many rotations should we do? At least 3 typically, because less than that and I feel like it's not as secure as it could be. 3. But I'm going to go ahead and do 5 on this one, just to show off, like, I like that repetitive patterning, that texture there. It really shows off how pretty the half round wire is. Okay, so now from here, we want to make sure that they're just stacking side by side, but not overlapping each other. We're going to get a little bit of a split going here. I'm just bringing my finger down to bring those wires away from each other. And I'm going to bring this whoop, around. And sorry, it's so cumbersome. Trying to make sure there's no twists in the wire. I'm just bringing this piece down in between our 2 wires. I'm so sorry I keep hitting the tripod. I'm sure that's loud in y'all's ears. And then I'm going to get in there with my pliers, pull it out a bit, and give that a snip. And then from here you could use your bent nose pliers or whichever ones you prefer to push that wire back down just as much as you can. And now bringing these wires back up to each other. You could use nylon jaw pliers here, but I'm just going to use my flat nose and just smoosh. Get that nice and cinched down, nice and flat. And so you can see how that came out. Double checking every step of the way to make sure our stone is still working. That'll be nice and tight. Very good. And it's okay that there's that little bit of a gap right there, because that'll actually give us room to stretch our stone into it. And then whenever we do our epoxy backing, I'll show you a little trick to make sure that you get a nice clean look on the front too. Okay. So now from here, we get to do all the artsy fartsy stuff. So I am actually using my fingers, going to measure out 2 finger widths. Let's let me measure. That is about 1.25 inches, maybe 1.5 inches. But however far you come out, just make sure it's consistent on each side. And I'm actually just grabbing both sides of these wires, and I'm going to bend this one around, using the edge of the bezel as a frame point of when to stop. And so I'm going to be coming around and bringing this side down also. It doesn't have to be perfectly symmetrical, just pretty close. Or as perfect, it only has to be as perfect as you want it to be. How about that? And so now I'm coming in, and you can see I put my pliers in to one spot and then brought it down on the outside and just started pushing, trying really hard to keep everything in one plane here. If I had the stepped mandrel pliers, this would be a perfect time to use those, because the taper of the point here can make some wonky stuff start to happen. But I'm just going to try to keep the tips of my pliers equidistant the whole time, and I'm just going to rotate around. You see how that happens? Remove my pliers, then unwind my hand, replace the tips of my pliers, and cinch down until everything's nice and snug. And so now the key here is to try to get the other side to look like this one, which can take a bit of practice. Quite a bit of practice sometimes, but be patient with yourself, be patient with the project, you'll get the hang of it. So I'm going to flip it over, replace my pliers, and just start twisting and bending it down. There we are. This one's a little wider than that one, but it's not the end of the world. Hopefully not, at least. And that exposes this center wire a bit. That's okay, we can press that down in there a little bit more. And so now from here, I'm going to bring my round nose pliers in, press this one very close up to the spiral we just made, bring our pliers in about 5 millimeters away from each other on the point, and do a bend. I'm going to flip it over, do that same thing on the other side, and a bend. And what that's accomplishing is it's giving us a much more 90-degree bend than what we might have gotten if we just pushed upward. And so now I'm going to hold it, bring it out a little bit, grabbing it right there, kind of in line with everything, and I'm going to press this around. Oops. And I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. I've found the key to staying symmetrical with this is, while my muscle memory is fresh on my mind from this piece, I'm going to go around and do it to the other side. Because the more you can replicate the same hand motion, the same like kind of trajectory of the wire bending around, the more likely you will get a symmetrical piece. And so now that same trick, where we insert our pliers, one nose in the loop, one nose outside the loop, bring it a little closer this time, and holding from the inside of the bezel too, because we don't want any distortion here. I'm just going to bring that down. And that's going to give us a much nicer, tighter little loop. So just grabbing and down. And so now to bring in a small squiggle, I'm going to hold right there, and bring it up. And it's okay if it deviates away from the center area. That's all right. We can bring it back around. Bring it up. And now just taking from right here where it was, just removing and replacing to where that wire is on the other side. And I'm going to try to make a nice little little loop. And if you feel like your bezel's starting to get in the way, just offset it a little bit. Excuse me. And bring it down like that. Let's do that same thing on the other side. And this one we can offset to that side. That way not everything's, they're kind of stacked instead of getting in each other's ways. There we go. Bringing it down and around. And so again from here, just placing it there in the loop and getting a bend going, bringing it out away from the rest of our piece. So I'm going to flip that around again and just boop, bringing it out. So now we can come in, get everything flattened back up, kind of press. See how that makes a nice like squiggle? Do 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 do. Wiggle wiggle. Just pressing in. Then we can lay it on our work surface. This is just a ceramic, like a very plain ceramic tile that I like as a work surface because paint, everything scratches off of it because of the nice glaze. And it gives me a nice flat, non-porous work surface. So I just press everything flat. You could come through with like a nylon head hammer and work harden this up a little bit. I'm not quite there yet. So let's see if we want to duplicate the results from last time, because I like the nice wide shoulder on top. It gives me something to hook the necklace onto. So from the base of that squiggle, I'm going to come 2 finger widths out and grab it and press like that. And now I'm grabbing here and here, trying to hold everything stable. Yeah, I think like this will do me. And just bringing it around. You can see how that's starting to form. There's our little spiral. Keep your hand comfort in mind. This is just the way I move my hands. The way you get to your end result may be completely different, and that's okay too. So just bringing it around. There we are. So it actually came out quite different than the first one. I guess I went in the opposite direction, but I actually like this better. So I'm going to bring that in, line it up, and bend it down like this. I'm going to flip her over and keeping the tips quite close together, making a nice little spiral. Bringing just that in like that. Now this one came in a little deeper than that one. I'm not entirely certain why, but sometimes those things just happen. Okay. So from here, we're going to bring this down. And if I had twisted in the other direction, like instead of twisting up this way, if I had twisted towards the other side, I would have gotten a more tight in as opposed to having that open space. But you may really like the open space, so it's nice to see some variation happening. We're going to slide our stone in. Check the center line. Okay. Sorry for loud noises. And I'm going to come in and again line this up, overshooting just a little bit. I really want this to be tight, 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 tight. So overshooting by almost a full millimeter. I'm going to take it and, oops, bend a sharp 90°. It's almost actually a little further than 90 degrees once you compare the ends, but okay. Sliding the stone back, and you could have the stone in there the whole time. I just prefer to not have it completely set yet. So now we're going to take this and we're going to form it around. And I'm going to come in to right here. Again, just a little past that center line, and give us a nice bend. And so now we can test this by coming in and grabbing. And so that's how it's looking. And I think that's actually pretty cool. I really like it being open on the shoulders. I might try, no, it's a little late for that maybe. I really wanted these two sides to be symmetrical, and they're quite not at this point. So I may be able to come in, tighten that up a little bit, or is that detrimental to it? No, yep, this is just life now. Okay, well, we'll see how it goes. Try to get everything nice and flat. And so now we're going to come in again with our half round wire. And I started to get a little bit of twisting and stuff in it, so I am going to go ahead and snip off just a few inches, just to make it a little less cumbersome. No point in making it harder than it has to be. So I'm going to come in and do that bend again, like that. And keeping an eye, do you see here on the back side how you can see where I started and stopped? But on the front, or the other side, the side I'm going to have be the front, they are not there. So I'm going to try to keep that consistent here on the back side. So I'm going to hook on this side, bring them together, and just bringing it, twisting around now. There we are. And if you start to get a little bit of spreading, just push everything in together, that's okay. This one being asymmetrical actually lends itself a little bit more, I think, to looking like an eye, because it'll kind of sit. I think it'll be okay. To let it be what it's going to be. So again, just bringing that around to the back. And now smoosh and smoosh. So from here, you'll notice I haven't tucked the tail yet. I'm going to try a slightly different way just to see if I like it better. Again, placing 2 fingers and coming out about that far on each side. You can see there was really some asymmetry happening because our ends are no longer lining up. So that's something to keep in mind as we proceed. We could actually right now go ahead and cut them, but I think I'm going to wait and see. Seeing as how this is not a perfectly symmetrical piece already, we may use that to our advantage. And so going through, bending them off to the sides, bringing them around like this. Then taking our pliers from here to grabbing on the side, bringing it around into a nice little spiral, bringing it on and all the way up, flipping it over, doing that same thing on the other side. Removing the pliers and replacing them. Yeah, there we go. See, now that came out really symmetrical. Dadnabbit. If only, if only. And so from here, we could go ahead and finish it with some light spiraling. I'm going to go ahead and get this one tucked around. So I'm going to use my bent nose pliers to firmly grab that wire and then just bring it and press it. And then just kind of tucking. I'm going to lift up just a bit so we can get our snips in there. And snip. And now, again, just pressing that down and in. We want to make sure it's not going to cause any problems for anybody later on. Yeah, that's really not symmetrical. Oh well. So for this one, I'm actually going to bring from the bend of my finger to the tip, so about an inch. And I'm just going to snip off. And then I'm going to grab as close to the tip of the wire as I can, while holding it with as much of the plier as I can. And I'm going to start coming in for just a nice tight little spiral. Single layer spiral. So there we are. And now on this side, again, to try to make it look like it's asymmetrical on purpose, I'm going to grab these 3 layers and bend. I'm going to come up here and I'm going to bend. Then I'm going to grab it and I'm going to make a little squiggle. Do 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 do. Wiggle wiggle. Do 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 do. Wiggle wiggle. Okay, so we've got a nice little squiggle. And now I'm going to come out finger width, or finger length, from one knuckle to a little past the tip, and snip. Now I'm going to come in making a spiral on this side as well, single layer spiral. There we go. Just bringing everything in. So now we can place this in there. It actually works really well to just place it onto, yeah, this did not come out nice and symmetrical the way I had originally intended, but that is okay. I am going to kind of fight to get these at least in line with the center point a bit if I can manage it. So I'm just coming through and bringing this cabochon as close to the front of our bezel as I can. And you can check the depth on the back side to make sure that it's pretty even. There we go. And so now from here, I'm going to use just a bit of packaging tape. And I'm going to lay it face down onto our tape. And not worrying if it's bumpy over the eye, I just want to make sure that it's making a good connection over these spots here. Because that way, if it does leak through at all, it'll keep it from puddling on the bottom, because at least the tape is there. I'm going to come in and actually try to remove the tape a bit over the face of the eye. Nope, okay. Because you still want it to be able to lie evenly, or lay evenly. So to do that, I actually have, this is a polymer clay cutter. You could just set it anywhere really, but oops, pushed through too much. You could set it on there and make sure that it's level, or you could prop with other things on your work surface. I really like that. I think that'll do me. And now I'm actually going to use this to mix up some 2-part epoxy. I really prefer the Cabochon Home 5-minute epoxy. It's just right for my applications. It's what I've been using for about 10 years now to set all of my cabochons into chainmail or into wire wrapping like this, where it is going to need some glue. A lot of folks really like E6000, but I've found if I'm globbing it on the way that I do with this stuff, it never quite sets up all the way. So just portioning out that much. That's all that was left in the bottle. And I like it too because you just push the plunger, there's no measuring. And I'm going to use just a toothpick here to blend this together. Now it says 5 minutes. It is not kidding. Like at the end of 5 minutes, it's done. Usually I only give myself about a 3-minute window. So I only spend about a minute mixing. Okay, so I'm going to glob it up here and then bring it. Sorry, I know I'm not quite in frame. There we go. Just trying to get it moved over as quickly as possible into, and you can see this stuff is very thick, very goopy, perfect for this. I would not recommend like ice resin or art resin or anything like that. Be real careful because it's, you can see I kind of pushed it there on that one. I almost had a mess. But much like any other resin project, I'm just filling it in. I don't worry at all about bubbles or anything like that. This is purely for function, not for aesthetic. Unfortunately, that came out to be like the perfect amount. Excellent. If you don't mix enough, you can go in and add another layer, but you don't necessarily have to be doming it up quite as much as I am here. I just enjoy doing that. Because if you pour out too little of the stuff, I feel like a lot of it gets left on the paper. So I'm just going to fold that. Put that into the bin where the dogs don't get to it. And now I'm going to make sure that it's drying evenly. Like it's not going to start pouring out one of the sides or anything like that. Now you could also go in and use like a UV resin or something. Again, I would recommend using the tape, that way anything runnier doesn't just like leak straight through to the front. But while this is setting up, I'm going to go through and make some of the decorative pieces, with which the rings that I just knocked off. So we're going to start with our little teardrop that's going to hang off the bottom. Bring this back down. This is a head pin, which it's just like a little nail. You can see that flat head on there keeps our beads from sliding off. So now I'm going to use my round nose pliers and I'm just going to grip and start spiraling this in. You can see how it's climbing up the nose of my pliers. That's all right. But it's making not quite a wrapped loop, but it is a little bit more secure than just doing a single little loopy line. There we are. I usually do my links like this whenever I don't quite have enough to do a proper wrapped loop, but whenever it's too thin to just do a little, like a little link loop. So there's many different ways to do it, as there are people to do it, so use what method you prefer. So we have that ready. And now I'm going to go through and using our largest rings, our 16 gauge 5/16, I'm going to open 2 and close 1, and then place the closed one. Whenever I close a ring, you can see I want it to be as perfect as possible. That way there's no little pokey bits, because these are just budded rings, but I want it to look like a perfect little circle. And then I'm going to put it on one of the open rings, like this, and close it. And so we've closed it, and now I'm going to take our third ring, hook it through both of those, and see how they're sitting, just hook through both, and then close our third ring. And then you can drop it, and it won't look like much, but if you kind of just poke it a bit, it'll start to lay and look like a very nice little Mobius flower, where you can't tell which ring was the first one you added or the last one. It just sits there like that. And so now we are going to open up 2 more of these large rings. And whenever I open a ring, you'll notice I do it like this, as opposed to if I were to open a, actually, I will destroy one for science's sake, as opposed to opening it like this to get them hooked together, because if you do it that way, you're going to have a heck of a time trying to get it to close and be a proper circle again. Whereas whenever you have them like this, you saw we just close it like, and you can add a little bit of pressure inward, pushing in with each of your pliers to help close that gap. But this has less stress on the ring, and I feel like gets a more consistent result with less effort. So we're going to open those 2. I'm going to open one of our smallest rings, and then 2 of our 16 gauge 1/4 inch. I think. There we go, there's an open one. And as far as finishing techniques for this necklace, you could do more chainmail, you could do beading, you could do a wire link necklace. I'm just going to be attaching 2 links of mechanized chain. This is a welded chain, so it's very strong even though it's dainty, and it's hypoallergenic, which is really nice. So we can kind of check the back side, and this stuff heats up, like the wire is hot actually. Okay, so we can come through. You can see we got a little bit of leaking around to the front. Oh man, we got a lot of leaking around to the front. But the tape kept it reasonably under control. And it actually, before it's completely cured, we can scrape it off of the glass a little bit. Just coming through with a craft knife. Getting that tidied up. Well, at least it didn't leak anywhere else. And I don't mind a little bit coming around to the front, but I do want to keep it nice and tidy, because I feel like it just encases it a little bit better. So again, while it's still kind of hot, kind of gummy, I'm just going to come in and shave it down before it sets up completely into a very hard resin that can be sanded to get it off, but I prefer doing it this way. And again, that's just my method of going about it. So just removing a little bit more of that goopy resin off of where it attached to the wire. Man, you know, I went through and I did this one as like a warm-up piece. None of the problems that I'm having with this one. None of the asymmetry, none of the leaky resin. So it just goes to prove sometimes the pieces just get a mind of their own and they're gonna mess up regardless of what you do. And I hesitate even to call it messing up, because I still think this is coming out really nice. it is what it is, and that's okay. So it's coming through, again, tidying up. There we go. Now we could have extended the epoxy over this layer also to have it be a little bit more stabilized, but again, that's your own personal preference. There we go. And as it sets up, I may come through with a little bit of a sandpaper and tidy this up just a little bit more. Okay, so now on to the final assembly. We have our Mobius flower, and I'm going to take our large rings and hook through down here and hook through all 3 of the Mobius and close. And you could use whatever you want here. Like, I've done this with a gear before. Like, instead of having the Mobius flower, I used like a large gear charm. Well, not large, it was like a 15mm diameter gear charm. So I've hooked through again all 3 rings of the Mobius flower, as well as the loop on our focal point. And close that ring. So you can see, I feel like that gives it a nice little bit of movement. And then I'm going to hook through with our small ring, all 3 of the Mobius, and then hook our link on there, or not link, our teardrop. And there's that. And now I'm going to put these 16 gauge 1/4 inch rings through right here on each shoulder. Sorry, I didn't mean to go off camera. Just like that. And then from here, this is what I would attach any chainmail or beading or anything like that to. That way you can extend it into however long of a necklace you would like. We could also come through and use a little bit of the half round wire to secure this section to that section, so there's no little hangy offy bits to get snagged. And I think I'm gonna do that. I just need to find a bit of wire. So here we have just some 26 gauge round silver. Remove the dog fur. Okay, and snipping. Excuse me. Okay, so now threading through. Sorry, going off camera. I'm actually going to zoom out just a hair. Give me a little bit more space to work in. And I'm just going to start kind of sewing them together. And again, I want to make sure that I'm able to get our wire down in there. So I'm actually going to open this spiral up just a bit, just enough. Oops. That will be able to stack these guys cleanly side by side. And again, at least 3 to 5 rotations. Keep everything looking, not just looking, but to keep things actually being nice and snug. Now you can see how this wire, with it being round all the way around, does not want to lay flat. It does not want to play snug. Like, and that's okay. We'll figure it out. But I did need something to snug these guys into where we're not going to have it tangling in a sweater or your hair. Okay. And so now this is a great place to use some very petite bent nose pliers and just get them in there and smoosh, smoosh. Okay. Flipping it over. I'm going to give myself just a little bit of a tail. And then I'm going to tuck that tail so that it can't poke anybody. Again, just coming in, trying to keep everything nice and tight. Yeep. Gotcha. I caught it. Not today, gravity. Okay, bringing this one around back up to this interior area. And doing stitching pieces together like this, we could go through and we could add some little decorative beads. You know, I actually think I'm going to do that. Let me grab that. I've got some right here. Some bicone beads. You could use whatever color that you like. I could go with black to play off of the teardrop. Let's see what would fit in there nicely. The 4mm, oops, the 4mm is too small, but the 6mm feels a little too big too. Though it looks like it might fit. Okay, so I'm going to grab 2 of the 6mm black. Set that off to the side. Just sliding the bead onto the wire. Maybe, I don't know, this might not work out the way that I intended. Maybe if I had some smaller beads right there, filling in, like maybe like a 1 and 2mm or a 2 and 3mm silver bead. Okay, so I'm going to leave it empty, but that would have been pretty cool. And you may go through on your project and fill in with beads there on the side. Even like a little teardrop or something. I don't know, there's so many. This is just the foundation. I want to see what you guys do with this, to take this and build on it with your own creativity and your own imagination and, you know, techniques and styles. And I'm excited to see the infinite variations that y'all will be able to come up with. Okay, so we got that snipped and we're tightening that spiral back down. No more snaggy pulling away. And again, just pushing that nice and tight with my fingernails. Okay, and so now from here we could make these guys into bead links to attach into the necklace or whatever we like. But that is how I like to use, one of the many ways actually, that I like to use flat wire to set cabochons. Hey y'all, thanks so much for hanging out with me for this video. I really hope that it was helpful to you, and if you have any questions, comments, or ideas, I'd love to hear them down in the comment area. Also in the video description, after the tools and materials list, there are links to my social media, so if you follow along with any of my tutorials and want to share what you've made, or just want to share pictures of what you've made, you can tag me on Instagram or share it to my Facebook wall or anything like that. There's also links to my Patreon, where I'm able to make these daily tutorials and vlogs and live streams on behalf of all of my generous patrons and y'all here just hanging out with me watching this. So thank you guys a whole lot. And over on our Patreon, we do have where you can pledge, but I also post stuff that's available to everybody. As another thank you for you guys hanging out with us and doing everything that you do so generously. So be sure to check us out over there, because there's more information on how you can participate in my weekly giveaways, my monthly craft crates, my digital download content, all of those different things, as well as the drawn out template for if you like to follow along with drawn designs so that you can make, well, it's drawn for this one, but sometimes it ends up like this, and that's okay. But that way you can follow along and craft directly with me using the same template that I've used and stuff. So thank you guys again, though, and until next time, happy crafting. Bye.